Thank you for coming to listen to me for a short period of time. I'm generally a bit uneasy doing kind of like sage on the stage style of talks. I much prefer conversations, so we've got a nice small group. If you have questions as we go, then stop me, it's fine. We're going to have a Q&A at the end, but I'm keen to have some interaction. Because what I want to share with you today is, I suppose, how not to adopt less, so large-scale Scrum. You might have noticed, more astute of you, but I'm wearing my SAFE leadership retreat jersey today in honour of scaling frameworks. LeSS isn't a scaling framework, so I think I'd represent both sides of it. So I've been working in banking now for 12 years, I suppose. Always working in large banks, whether it's JP Morgan or RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, and now Deutsche Bank, always as a permanent member of staff. And for the last 7 years, I've been pretty much just working in Scrum-style events. Hold it closer. Just working in Scrum-style organisation. Working with Scrum teams, 1 team, 2 teams, going up to 5, 6, 7 and more. And that's kind of been my career in technology and banking, has just been doing less, or less-like stuff. I became a LeSS trainer a couple of years ago. In fact, that's why I'm kind of in Bucharest at the moment, taking some of my Deutsche Bank colleagues through the LeSS framework. And what's dawned on me is I don't think that people often benefit a lot from having people tell you kind of what you should do. Saying this is a silver bullet, this is the way you should do things. I prefer to sit down and stand and tell people the kind of ways that I've made mistakes, and the lessons I've learned, and then how I've maybe made the mistakes twice. And I'm a firm believer that really with LeSS or with any of these types of approaches, it's just about making a slightly wiser mistake each and every time and learning from it. So I want to share with you some of my biggest mistakes and some of the things that I would advise you perhaps not to do. So the 12th State of Agile survey said there's 5 reasons for failure in adopting Agile. That the company philosophy or culture is at odds with Agile. I'm sure that some of you have experienced that. Ultimately what we're saying is that also the company structure is at odds with some form of agility. That the people lack experience in Agile methods and practices, which again is something that I'll go into detail, give you some experience of how I've made this mistake hugely. A lack of management support, which is probably one of the hardest things to do, especially from a leadership perspective. So I'm going to explain some ways in which I've failed to get management support, or tried to get management support, got it and then lost it. How there's been a general resistance to change, and some of my examples of, I suppose, why I found that is. And I think it's different depending on who we're talking about. So it's linked to lack of management support at times, and the lack of adequate business sponsorship. This is my business sponsor walking away from me in disgust because they just didn't like the transparency that we provided to them. So, where have I gone wrong? Just raise your hand if you're in any way familiar with large-scale Scrum. Large-scale Scrum with LeSS. A few people? Okay. So one thing in LeSS we have this idea of going deep and narrow over broad and shallow. And what we're talking about with this is really working in small batches. Surprise. Small batches are good, and even when you're doing some kind of large-scale change, small batches are beneficial. There was a big LeSS transformation that happened at JP Morgan a few years ago. I think where, from what I hear, they bit off more than they can chew and tried to change too much at once. And I've been involved in, or at least on the periphery of large-scale centralised agile transformations, where they've come in and they've tried to solve some of the really big, broad organisational problems first. And again, there's been a money pit, they spent lots and lots of money and nothing really has changed. So we have this idea in LeSS that we'd like to go deep and narrow over broad and shallow, because a small slice of the organisation change the system of work, change the structures, make it look completely different, much more aligned to less, and then master it, make it great, and then grow it from there. One of the biggest, the things that really sent one of my most successful kind of attempts at less in complete reverse is when we had 3 teams, 3 really good high-performing teams, and we didn't feel like we needed to do much more than that. We were happy with 3 teams. We spent a long time, a week where we got together, and we got the business sponsors, and we got the SMEs, and we got the users. We flew people over from India. We spent a week really defining just how, what is the scope going to be? Really truly, what is the bare minimum amount of software that we could release into production to get meaningful feedback and put us in a good position? And we were confident with what we had done. We were happy. It was a small group of people. We managed to find a clear scope. We got a good buy-in from one of the heads of operations to come and be our product owner. Everything was looking fantastic. But what wasn't fantastic was the technology area getting upset because we said it would take us probably about 18 months to deliver this. So they said, well, okay, well you've got, 20, 24 people at the moment, how about we just give you loads of money and then we treble the number of people? We didn't really like that idea. But it happened anyway. So what happened, instead of us being able to kind of really take these 3 teams, take this new piece of work, really master it, really prove it, show that we could work in different ways, and really create a nice case study for it, what happened is that we ended up with a huge number of people joining us who didn't have any skills, weren't really familiar with the technical environment, with the business, or the technology. And then we made the mistake of, because we had all these people with Scrum teams, of having too many Scrum Masters. And each Scrum Master then began to pull the team in different ways. The mistake was that we didn't constrain it. There was a lot of change that was going to have to happen. There was lots of learning that the team would have to go through, lots of issues the team would have to resolve. And instead of just kind of sticking to our guns and saying we're going to go deep and narrow, we're not going to change it, we ended up trying to affect too much of the system, trying to educate and support too many people, and all it did was slow us down. So the moral of the story is, for me, that I should have stuck to my guns. I should have made that small area work. I should have gone deeper and narrow, really proven, because if you look on the LeSS website, there's a case study of mine from the Royal Bank of Scotland. This little story is kind of what happened after that. So we'd proven ourselves. We had a lot of credit, but we couldn't stick to my guns for whatever reason. I felt pressured. I felt like I just had to say yes. And we ended up trying to affect too much, and very quickly it all went completely back to how the organisation really wanted it to be, which was separate groups of PAs, separate developers, separate testers. They were pressured to deliver, meaning that they asked the development team to stop testing. So if you're going to adopt less, start with a small batch of people is my recommendation. Do it with no more than 50 and really prove from front to back, from organisational structure, design, everything, just prove that you can do it differently. This is probably the piece of learning that I found hardest to take, which is how to get the engagement and support from the senior people. I found it was always been quite easy to kind of work at the bottom and then get people inspired and get people working differently and grow this little bubble, this little balloon of Scrum or Agile. And it felt really good and you achieve some interesting stuff, but it gets to a point when that bubble, that little balloon gets to a point, it starts hitting up against organisational boundaries, organisational problems, stuff that you can't resolve unless you have the right type of buy-in. You can't really get a lot of the gains from using this, or generally, unless you start to enact real organisational change. So, I have consistently failed to really invest enough time in helping leadership and management understand why. Or, if I do help them understand why, so they can begin to buy into it more, they don't want to buy into it because the way that the reward mechanisms work in the organisation, they're rewarded for their little thing and making their little things appear to be productive. They're not willing to give up their technical silo and merge it in with other parts because it means they're not going to get their bonus. So, working top down and bottom up, kind of really inspiring for leadership, helping them understand why, supporting them on that journey, coaching them, providing some mentoring, and working at the bottom, so you squeeze them both. You kind of squeeze it like a lemon, the juice comes out. That's what you want to do. Going one way or the other means you're always going to butt up against some kind of problems, either resistance from the bottom or a failure to understand why and really support you from the top. And I think a lot of this is because what I found is that the people who are at the top of an organisation are quite intelligent or quite clever, or at least think they are. And the cleverer you think you are, the more it's likely to stop you from wanting or thinking that there are new things to learn. The perceived amount of knowing what you know means that you're not willing to learn because you think you already know it. So I've lost track of a number of times that I've worked with senior management and they say, don't worry, trust me, what I'm doing will feed nicely into this new world that we're creating. Trust me, I understand Agile, I know what future teams are. And then it becomes very clear after a month or two that they don't actually really understand what it is. And all they're doing is more of the same. And part of this is for the reasons I mentioned before, but part of it is because people are intelligent, people are clever, these guys and girls have spent years and years learning their trade, they've been rewarded for it, they've been told they could be, and they are intelligent. And that gets in the way of people learning. So one mistake I made is that I forget to let people know that I appreciate their intelligence and I appreciate their input, and work on ways to try and help them see that there are other ways of going about some of the common problems that we find. But to an extent, when you're dealing with senior people, there's never to be fearful of really educating everyone. We talk about the top 5 reasons. Part of it is a lack of skills or competency in relation to agile practices. A lot of this starts with education. Most of it starts with some form of education. And at times I've been fearful of really approaching people because I know I'm going to get some backlash. Or I'm fearful of the political stuff that will happen. Bad experiences before where we've had people kind of working behind the scenes to try and divert things and really do really kind of clandestine tactics to try and take things off the rails. It's led me to be scared of kind of approaching people and approaching that real senior leadership engagement and management. And I'm not afraid to admit that, and I don't think I'm the only one. I think of all the coaches and scrum masters and teams that I worked with in a hierarchical organisation, of which is the only organisation I've ever worked, where there is a leader-follower style structure, and you know that your longevity in the organisation, in that team, that you'll pay, your rewards, all depends upon what that senior person thinks of you. You're probably not going to want to try and challenge them in some way. So I'm learning to be less fearful of working with senior management and engaging them and taking them on the journey and finding ways to create finding safe, kind and compassionate ways to help people understand that there's a lot of stuff that they probably don't know. And probably a lot of the problems that they're experiencing at the moment, there are not obvious solutions to, because if the solutions were obvious, we'd already be doing them. Finding ways to expose that in a kind, I can't underestimate it, in a kind and compassionate way, and not being a complete tool about it, is a big challenge. And that's where I think understanding facilitation, understanding coaching, understanding human behaviour plays a key part in this. Strip away Agile and the rest of it, what we're talking about is change. Changing the behaviours, changing organisational structures. And so, I think for me, I'm focusing on working on my facilitation skills. Good question. I'm not going to answer the question with a question. So I've just spent the last 2 days just doing certified LeSS training.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, of course. So how do you blend the training? Do you start at the top and work down? Do you start at the bottom and work up? Do you start in the middle? Do you come from the side? Do you do it face to face? Do you do it online? Yeah, because what is the mix of it? I've just spent 2 days, the first 2 days of my certified LeSS practitioner course, and so it's more group coaching in that instance, so I tend to kind of ask people to reflect and try and answer the question themselves. I'm not going to do that because that's a cop out. You're here to what you want to hear me. So, you want to get the leadership, the most senior people you can, the people who control the organisational structures, in my opinion, having a deep understanding of why we're doing this, and also understanding that LeSS, Agile, etc. are not the goal. You choose to use Scrum or whatever it is because there's a problem you're trying to resolve. Right? That's the goal, resolving the problem, whether it's waste reduction, whether it's customer satisfaction, employee engagement. They're the real goals. All Agile, DevOps, Lean, whatever we want to do, they're just means to an end. It's how we can go about doing it. So, working at the top of my senior leadership, getting them understood, getting them buying into saying, well, what's your organisational vision? How are you going to do it? Helping them understand how they can do it and how that relates to Agile, and then giving them some training and some education on certain things. I think something like systems thinking, systems modelling is an invaluable tool which I rely on heavily in most of what I do. So I always like to look to start with those guys, and even the seniors I can get, and then follow it up and do some stuff at the ground level, make people know that you're there. But again, let the people direct what you're educating them on. There are some decisions that are made. So when I work with an organisation, is to adopt LeSS. So I'll deliver some LeSS training. It's nice, it's very broad, it covers lots of areas, but then it's over to the teams. So now you understand this, you know where we're going to go, it's maybe no surprise to you. So what would you like to do next? If you want to optimise for reduction of waste, what kind of training do you think you need? And there'll be 5 ways to live without training. I mean, it's just gradually finding ways in, going with the interest and momentum that is already there rather than pushing against it. I interviewed someone the other day who was explaining as an Agile coach how his role is to go in and convince management that they should adopt Agile. Well, that kind of sounds more like McKinsey, some kind of consultancy rather than coaching. So yeah, I mean, I try and go with the flow. I start at the top, and then I quickly go and work at the bottom, and then we kind of see what happens in the middle area. But just really invest in people. And I say educate everyone. I mean, it's educate everyone always. One of my current goals I'm experimenting with is trying to increase the amount of peer-to-peer learning that happens in an organisation, so that it isn't dependent upon me. So I've developed various kind of education programs and support mechanisms to get more people teaching each other. So that whenever I come in the office, what I want to hear is like, oh, today someone's running a session on this, or today we're running a clinic about this. That's what I want to hear. So then everyone starts educating each other, and that becomes the norm. Have a real learning organisation. Volunteering is a wonderful thing if people understand what the word means. And what I found is in a hierarchical organisation, where it's this kind of leader and follower style thing, where there's really very little empowerment, that volunteering to the leadership means choosing people to go and do something. I will volunteer them. Which in a hierarchical organisation, maybe that is semantically, maybe that's the correct choice of words, but that isn't really where we want to get to, what I want to get to, which is I want people to have freedom of choice, to be involved early on, to volunteer, to want to be involved, to find those 10 to 15% of people who really truly believe that what we are doing aligns to their belief system, so when they come and join us, they are more motivated and more engaged, and they're on the same journey as us. Is it the diffusion of innovation curve, where you've kind of got the 10 to 15% of people who are the people that will queue for a day to get the new iPhone, and then you've got like the 10 to 15% people at the end who are still using a file of facts and pen and paper, and then everyone else in the middle kind of slowly adopts. I think if you use volunteering, you find those 10 to 15% of people who really truly believe in it. But one of the mistakes that I made is that I didn't explain really what volunteering meant, and I never pushed back when managers were volunteering their people. And so I think I often find myself looking at the dictionary to understand the meaning of these words, because there's so much ambiguity around it. So you use volunteering, but I've messed up by not explaining what volunteering really means. I've also messed up by overestimating the experience and skills of my volunteers by giving them too much latitude. Someone like that, a guy called Goico Antic, the guy who makes spec by example and impact mapping, once said to us, you've got to balance earning and learning. So the time you're spending learning is time you're not spending delivering effectively. And one of the most recent LeSS adoptions that we did, I think that on reflection and hearing their feedback when they come to that, and here's our reflection on this process, that the guys that got together to really drive that initial stage of the adoption, who volunteered, I gave them too much space. I didn't support them enough. I assumed they knew more than they did, and so they went really slow. They learned a ton, and I think they enjoyed learning a lot, and I think they enjoyed the experience, although it was painful at times. But I didn't invest enough in them. I wasn't present enough to really support them. So if you're going to use volunteering, make sure that you're there to support your volunteers. Make sure that you're giving them a fair opportunity to learn and to really assess the situation, so that they do spend more time earning than they do just learn by failing and then relearning. So and this to me is one of the biggest revelations recently. So now if we're going to do volunteering, I make sure we are educating everyone and making sure people have the right level of support. Yes, sir.
I can also keep some things to the end first. Don't feel answer now. On volunteering, how do you keep them engaged? How do you keep the volunteers engaged? Because it's usually not something that you would do for a month. It's probably 1 year.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it depends what they're volunteering for.
Repeat the question, please.
I'll repeat the question. So how do you maintain momentum in your volunteers? How do you keep them engaged? It depends what the nature of the work is. We always say that we're going to start a LeSS adoption. Then, if you want to be involved, we do a bit of like PR, a bit of marketing. Hi, we're here. Hand out some t-shirts, and get people engaged, let everyone know what's going on. And then we say, okay, well, if you want to volunteer, we don't know what you'll do. Just put your name on this list. And so we begin to filter through it. An organisation of say 600 people, maybe we'll get 10. I think that's a fair return on the investment. And then those 10 people we just invest heavily in. And for me, it really comes down to helping them really understand why they're doing it. And then the adoption piece, you want it to be as short and as sharp as possible. You want to understand your product, you want to define done, then you want to form some teams. And you want to do that as quick a time as possible so that the momentum isn't lost. There's people that volunteer to shepherd some of that through, and then we'll probably end up being the teammates, or the scrum masters, or the fake product owners, or whatever it may be. But instant event, I mean, I've seen great. This instance where I messed up and just overestimated, and we're talking about this now. We did this crowdsourcing experiment where by that point I trained, I don't know, like 250, 300 people in LeSS, I think, by that point. Maybe a few less, maybe 150. But anyway, so we got all these people together and we said, great, what we're going to do is we want to adopt LeSS. Yes, great. Okay, so you guys can make the plan. We want to define a product, we want to define done, and they want to get some volunteers and form some teams. So they're the topics. We just facilitated this room with about 50 to 60 people, and we got them to develop the plan. And it was a wonderful thing to behold. But there are problems with that. They're in their old paradigm thinking. They couldn't break out that old paradigm thinking. So what we got was a very kind of traditional plan with lots of worries and concerns. And then the team that then went to pick that up didn't really feel really connected to a lot of the work. So we found we put all this effort into making the plan. It generated lots of ideas, which was great, and generated lots of questions, which was fantastic. But was the plan followed? No, not really. Did it take too long to then execute anyway? Yeah, it did. So we did suffer from some of that momentum thing. But when the teams were formed, having these people who have been involved in the whole journey of defining a product, finding a product owner, etc., it was quite lovely to see how quickly that team got together and really started creating a huge amount of transparency as to the existing dysfunction within the organisation. They were doing some great things, but as I understand it, that LeSS adoption, as I think, has now stalled a bit because they're great in terms of transparency, but transparency really sucks for senior people because it means that everything that they've created and think is amazing maybe isn't that amazing when they're trying to optimise for something different. So we're meant to just hit them with why. Keep it short, keep it sharp, work in small batches. It's kind of like the standard kind of John Cotter change stuff, really. Get a quick win and consolidate it. move on. Another quick win, consolidate and move on. Have a good vision, get people engaged in it, get the right level of support, and it becomes a little bit less hard. I've also, this is a classic one, but not, at least, like, you go and you're going to do it, it's all great, but then people think that the organisational structure is going to stay the same. So one thing, the mistake that I made is not sharing what the new organisational structure will look like early. And being clear, but when I draw kind of a product group manager, the managers are optional in this, but in large organisations it reduces some of the friction. So product group manager, and then team, product owner. What people fail to really get is that is the actual org structure. I'm not adding anything. There's no leads, there's no managers, there's no project manager, there's no other stuff. There's no separate testing team. There's no separate architecture function. That's the base, less organisational structure. I often haven't done. What I have found is that when you do that, and then people say, okay, well, we need to, but what about central architecture? They're a thing, we're not going to get rid of them, what do we do? Then we enter into a conversation, say, okay, if we're going to sub-optimise this, that's fine, but let's put some rigorous thought into why we are sub-optimising it, and what the effect could be. So I've taken too long to do this before, and or I've shown it and I haven't made it clear enough that actually that LeSS is a really simple, it's an organisational design, it's a very simple one of that, it's very lean, and there's not a lot added to it if you really want to be effective. So yeah, not sharing it early enough and not getting it in place day one means you're already making compromises and you're going to find it slightly more difficult. It's one of the less rules actually. Like get the less organisations, get the less structure in there day one. Then we say, yeah, if you need to, if there's ways to do it, you can build it up bit by bit, but if you start with something big and you don't get it in place and you try and tailor it down, people are always going to keep more than they need because you're going to keep it just in case. So not having an organisational perfection vision or a shared vision of what we're optimising for, I won't spend a lot of time on this. An organisational perfection vision, any kind of vision, it's like a product vision. It pulls people together. It should articulate how people should behave differently on a daily basis. It can't be rubbishy corporate value statements up on the wall that people ignore. It can't be something which is just nebulous or a bit vague. I think a perfection vision should say, this is how we want the organisation to be. And any statements within there should tell you about how you should be behaving differently on a daily basis. Like the agile principles are a half decent set to start with, right? If you can just stick to them, then fantastic. But they kind of tell you that if the developers and the business should interact daily, and you've got an idea of kind of how you maybe start to tweak your behaviours and things you need to change. If the best architects emerge themselves from organising teams, then great, you kind of get an idea of what you need to do. So any kind of value statements, any organisational perfection vision statement should articulate the kind of behavioural changes that you expect to see. When I haven't done this, has anyone seen the leadership video by David Marquette, the Turn the Ship Around guy? And it's one of those lovely hand-drawn things, and there's a little image at one point where it says, if you think what he was doing with his leadership style meant that there was lots of people just going off in random directions, right? That's what can happen. Get people going off and doing random stuff that doesn't align to what you want to achieve, unless you can have that shared vision. Unless the leadership and everyone from the top leadership to the real valuable people in your organisation, people that are writing the code, people that are doing the analysis, the people that are automating the testing. Everyone needs to understand how they should have to behave differently. If you can get that high alignment, you can have loosely coupled teams go about doing their work because they're aligned on the vision. And when I haven't got that, I mean, it alludes to some of the earlier points. You will get people going off and just doing random stuff that they think is right. So spend time, get an organisational perfection vision, create a shared understanding of what you're trying to optimise for, and support people on that. Because when I haven't, it's generally a painful situation. Yeah, how are we doing for time?
We're good.
Yeah, because I'm almost finished, so we can discuss.
It's going to be fun. Is there any example that you have of good vision?
I think there suppose there's an example in the third LeSS book. I've got a few knocking around somewhere. I think that was it Switch by Chip and Dan Heath maybe has some good ideas around this. I can't recall. I'll see if I can dig some out. The thing is, a lot of the stuff that I've had historically, I've had to leave in my organisation. But I can definitely talk about some things, and I've probably got one or two I could share. So, I haven't spoken for long, but I didn't really want to because there's pizzas and they'll go cold. But no, don't believe anything that I've said. Don't take any of my advice if you don't want to. But all I ask is that I suppose I don't want people to make the same mistakes that I made. I want people to make better mistakes than I made and learn more. So I hope what I've given you is a brief insight into every organisation that I've worked in has more than 10,000 people working in technology. I don't know what it is to work in a small organisation. I only know what it's like to work in these big orgs. And so all of my experience is based upon working in somewhat smaller parts of bigger organisations. So maybe some of what I said here isn't applicable to where you are, and that's fine. There isn't a best practice. But in my context, I've messed up, and I wanted to share some of those mistakes with you today in the hope that you don't fall into some of the same traps that I have. That's me. I do some stuff. Thank you for listening.